Understanding Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, Culture and Actuality explained. The essence of the world's spirit is a profound, self-aware consciousness that not only recognizes itself but also comprehends the fundamental nature of the reality it encounters. However, the existence of this world is equally shaped by the active engagement of self-consciousness, which undergoes a transformative process. In this process, self-consciousness sheds its individual identity, its personal traits and inherent quirks, to construct the very world it perceives. This world, once formed, appears as an external entity that self-consciousness must now claim as its own. Yet, this act of relinquishing one's self-centered identity is itself influenced by the existing world, creating a cyclical relationship where self-consciousness gains control over the world precisely by surrendering parts of itself. In this dynamic, self-consciousness only attains true reality when it distances itself from its own individuality, adopting a universal character. This universality serves as both its validation and its tangible existence. The equality it achieves is not the superficial kind found in legal systems, where recognition is granted simply for being. Instead, it is an equality earned through the deliberate act of self-alienation, where self-consciousness molds itself to fit a broader, shared framework. This universality is not passive, it actively shapes itself and, in doing so, becomes real. Hegel introduces this concept in his discussion of culture and its realm of actuality, beginning in paragraph 488. While his language is abstract, the core idea is clear. The world's spirit is infused with a self-aware consciousness that understands both itself and the essence of reality. The more critical point, however, lies in the second sentence, which emphasizes that the world's existence is tied to the self-consciousness's journey of shedding its natural, idiosyncratic self, a disciplining process essential to cultural development. Hegel outlines a dual movement. On one hand, self-consciousness renounces aspects of itself, and on the other, it seizes control of the world it has helped create. This process is projective, as self-consciousness constructs its understanding of the world it inhabits, a world shared with others. By framing the world in this way, self-consciousness sees it as a domain where sacrifices must be made to gain something greater. These two aspects, renunciation and possession, are intertwined, forming the foundation of Hegel's exploration of culture and actuality. Let's dive into Hegel's actual statement and unpack its meaning. Essentially, he posits that the world is initially perceived as something external and unfamiliar, a realm that the self must then claim as its own. Interestingly, this process of appropriation is facilitated by the self's renunciation of its autonomous being. At first glance, this might seem counterintuitive. It appears as though the self is relinquishing a fundamental aspect of itself, namely its capacity for self-definition and introspection. However, by surrendering this autonomy, the self gains a significant advantage. It earns a legitimate place within the world, a seat at the table, so to speak. This newfound position grants the self certain rights and opportunities for growth. To illustrate this concept, consider the experience of starting a new job, particularly one with a well-established structure and a large team. For instance, during my college days, I worked in a factory producing aluminum die-cast car parts. Upon entering this environment, it became clear that adapting to the existing routines and protocols was crucial. One of my first lessons learned was the importance of selecting the right gloves from the numerous barrels provided at the start of each shift. This might seem mundane, but it was essential for navigating the work environment safely and efficiently. The key takeaway was that, initially, it's beneficial to conform to the established order rather than trying to assert individuality. By embracing the norms and procedures, you open yourself up to a deeper understanding of the workflow, develop a sense of rhythm, and ultimately, enhance your overall performance. This idea is closely tied to Hegel's subsequent assertion that self-consciousness can only achieve actuality by temporarily alienating itself from its own identity, effectively becoming other to itself. This transformation allows the self to be perceived as a tangible entity, thereby gaining a foothold in the world. Hegel frames this process as a journey towards universality, where the individual transcends its particularity to embody a more universal character. Using our factory worker example, this means evolving from being just another new recruit, e.g., Joe Schmo, to becoming an integral, skilled member of the team, recognized for your contributions and valued for your expertise. In contrast to the previous discussion on legal rights, Hegel here highlights the self's proactive role in achieving this universal status, underscoring the dynamic interplay between individual identity and the broader world. As a blaster, you find yourself in a unique position, akin to a cog within a larger machine. You are an integral part of the intricate workings of a factory, yet at the same time, you embody the role of the worker. You are the one responsible for ensuring that the blaster functions as intended. This concept can be extended to various other examples that may resonate more closely with cultural aspects rather than industrial processes. When we explore these ideas, we assume the role of a universal entity. Consider, for instance, the role of a professor. In earlier times, there was a certain formality associated with this profession, which could be likened to a uniform. Professors often donned black and red attire, complete with jackets, which was not only typical for academic settings but also for individuals who dressed smartly in general. It was common for people, even those from lower middle-class backgrounds, to wear jackets and ties for various occasions, such as dining out, attending a movie, or flying on an airplane. Today, however, the perception of such attire has shifted. One might wonder why some professors choose to dress in a more casual manner, opting for polo shirts or even t-shirts, perhaps adopting a hipster style to connect with their students. This reflects a different kind of universality, yet fundamentally, it remains a similar concept. While personal expression is certainly valuable, it is essential to recognize that, in many cases, individuals are still fulfilling a specific role, donning a different type of uniform. In this context, the trend of hipster fashion may be seen as offering diminishing returns, at least in relation to our discussion. Philosopher Hegel articulates this notion by stating that universality is authenticated through actual existence. He discusses equality, noting that the equality shared among individuals is not merely a legal right. It does not stem from the immediate recognition and validation of self-consciousness that legal rights provide, which grants everyone the same status as equally alienated beings. This alienation arises simply from being human or occupying a certain social role. Hegel emphasizes that what distinguishes individuals is their active role in shaping themselves, which is what confers true equality. He refers to a non-spiritual form of universality within the realm of legal rights, which accepts all natural characteristics and forms of existence, treating everyone equally regardless of their choices. This perspective allows for a diverse range of identities, affirming that it is acceptable to be who you are. However, Hegel argues that the universality that truly matters is one that individuals have actively created for themselves. This form of universality is not merely formal or ideal, it is actual and grounded in reality. There is a process of self-creation involved here. Through cultural engagement, individuals gain recognition and establish their presence in the world. Their authentic nature and essence are often found in the alienation of their spirit from their natural existence. This externalization serves both as the purpose and the manifestation of the individual. It represents a transition from mere conceptualization of substance into tangible reality, and conversely, it reflects the journey of transforming thought into action. The unique individuality of a person transforms into an essential being through the process of cultural development. This transformation is what allows an individual to become a true, intrinsic being with actual existence. The extent of one's cultural development can be measured by their sexuality and power. Although the self recognizes itself as an individual, its true existence lies in transcending its natural state. Consequently, the original specific nature of a person is reduced to a mere quantitative difference in energy and willpower. However, the purpose and content of one's will are inherently tied to the universal substance and can only be universal. When a person's nature becomes the purpose and content of their will, it lacks real power and significance. It is an existence that struggles in vain to assert itself, contradicting the universal nature of true existence. If individuality is mistakenly believed to be rooted in the particularity of nature and character, then in reality, there would be no true individuality or distinct characters, as everyone would be essentially the same. This presumed individuality exists only in the mind, an imaginary concept with no real place in the world where only what externalizes itself, and thus the universal, achieves actual existence. This is why such imagined existence is often regarded with contempt and seen as mediocre. The German expressions for kind and good reflect a sense of honesty, even if not meant negatively. Consciousness, in this context, is not yet fully aware of what true individuality, culture, and reality are. Paragraph 489 is a fascinating passage with much to unpack. We don't need to delve too deeply or provide numerous examples to grasp its meaning. There are two main movements in this paragraph. The first discusses how an individual shapes themselves through culture, essentially molding themselves. The second part addresses how people often overemphasize their particularities, only to find that these distinctions are ultimately insignificant. The idea that everyone is unique, whether as creators, DIY enthusiasts, artists, or otherwise, loses its meaning. Hegel presents two different understandings of human beings in this passage, which he does not explicitly separate but which we can identify. The text suggests that through culture and self-building, an individual gains standing and actuality by becoming a universal being. This process involves the alienation of one's true original nature as spirit from its natural state. In this discussion, we explore two distinct senses of the term nature. The first refers to our natural being, which encompasses the inherent traits and characteristics we typically associate with our identity. The second sense, original nature, is a deeper, more authentic self that we must actively cultivate and bring to the surface. It is not immediately apparent and requires effort to uncover. For instance, consider someone who identifies as irascible, meaning they are easily angered. This might be a surface-level trait, but their true nature could be something more profound, revealed only after they have learned to understand, manage, and channel their anger constructively. This process of self-discovery and transformation is what we mean by original nature. Hegel's concept of externalization is central here. It is both the purpose and the existence of the individual. It serves as a bridge, transforming the abstract idea of substance into reality and, conversely, turning specific individuality into essentiality. In other words, an individual does not discover their true self by merely examining their natural traits, such as gender or physical attributes. Instead, it is through the process of engaging with the world, learning, and growing that one's true nature is revealed. This is particularly relevant for gifted children who may be told they are brilliant based on early achievements. However, as they encounter more complex challenges, they must learn to adapt, grow, and develop. This process, which Hegel refers to as alienation and externalization, involves shaping and forming oneself, transitioning from mere particularity to universality. Without this, their potential may go unrealized, and they may struggle to adapt to new situations. Hegel further explains that individuality is shaped by culture into what it intrinsically is. The German phrase das Individuum bildet sich durch die Kultur zu dem, was es an sich ist, translates to the individual shapes itself through culture into what it is in itself. This means that the in itself is not a static, inherent quality but rather something that is developed and revealed through the process of engaging with culture and self-discipline. Importantly, this is not an external imposition but an internal process of self-cultivation and growth. As we navigate through life, we often find ourselves jumping through hoops, so to speak, as we're presented with numerous challenges and exercises that help shape us into the person we're meant to be. At some point, we take ownership of our journey and realize that these experiences are essential for our growth and development. This is a crucial moment, as it allows us to tap into our true potential and become the best version of ourselves. Hegel's philosophy sheds light on this concept, suggesting that individuality is molded by culture into what it intrinsically is. In other words, our unique qualities and characteristics are shaped by the world around us, and it's through this process that we become actual, powerful beings. The measure of our culture is directly tied to our actuality and power, as it's through our engagement with culture that we develop the capacity to make a meaningful impact in the world. Now, let's dive deeper into Hegel's ideas. He notes that the self is aware of its own existence, yet its actuality is rooted in the ability to set aside its natural, inherent tendencies. This means that our true potential is realized when we're able to transcend our initial nature and tap into something greater. The specific characteristics that make us who we are become less important, and our willpower becomes the driving force behind our actions. However, it's essential to recognize that our will is not solely our own, but rather it's connected to the universal substance that governs us all. When we talk about the will, we're already considering the universal aspects that shape our desires and intentions. But what happens when we focus too much on our individuality, our particular nature? Hegel argues that this can lead to a kind of powerlessness, as our unique qualities become unreal and insignificant in comparison to the universal. It's a bit like trying to force our way through life without considering the larger context. To illustrate this point, let's consider an example from the world of art. Imagine a musician who's told they're a genius, but they refuse to learn proper technique because it's boring or too universal. They want to be original, to do their own thing, without being influenced by others. But the truth is, when we're first starting out, we don't really know who we are or what we're capable of. It's through discipline, through subordinating ourselves to the universal principles of our craft, that we discover our true potential. This insistence on individuality, on being unique, can be a trap. When we prioritize our particular nature over the universal, we can become stuck in a kind of imaginary existence, where our sense of self is rooted in our own ego rather than in the world around us. Hegel notes that in the actual world, there are no true individualities, no unique characters that exist in isolation. Instead, we're all connected, and our individuality is shaped by the universal forces that govern us. So, what does this mean for us? It means that our true power and actuality come from embracing the universal, from recognizing that our individuality is not something that exists in isolation, but rather it's shaped by the world around us. By tapping into this universal substance, we can transcend our limited nature and become the best version of ourselves. In the grand scheme of things, only the universal truly exists. You can try to manifest your individuality in various ways, such as through social media, a personal website, or even a MySpace page. Remember those. However, unless you're willing to set aside your own unique identity and contribute to something greater than yourself, your existence remains shallow and fleeting. It lacks depth, weight, and lasting impact. As the philosopher puts it, an imagined existence is often esteemed for what it is, a kind of being that's mediocre at best. In fact, the German expressions, kind and good of its kind, can be seen as euphemisms that downplay the true meaning, implying that being a kind of thing is not really something to be proud of. There's a significant difference between being a kind of thing and being the universal. To understand this distinction, we need to delve deeper into the concept.